I don't feel like I've put forth the same effort to resolve something because I can just will something into happening. That doesn't seem right to me.
In a fucked up way, I can actually relate to that quite a lot. But, for me, I've always had my fists. And man, is it way easier to solve problems when you're beating the shit out of somebody. I got hands to you. That was awesome. That was awesome. I want to know how to do that. You beat me.
Very well. Your first lesson begins now. Now, depending on what you wish to learn, there are different places where you can pull the information from the body.
Pop, pop.
Find wherever corruption is, root it out, and let the system do its job. If the system isn't doing its job, destroy the system.
can see things.
Look over here.
Yeah?
You look like a nerd.
Try again.
Really attractive.
We'll keep working.
No,
You're
that still
okay.
wasn't it. At least, thanks for, telling me.
Yeah,
You know,
just to be aware of.
most people would just be like, you're a bitch, and then would leave.
I've been around you long enough that I can
Yeah.
tell you were actually trying to be nice.
She was awesome.
She didn't say much.
That's why I liked her.
Really cool.
Well, good morning. How we doing, everyone? Morning, Nix. Morning, Swiftness. Hey, Ari. Well, I have been having so much fun plotting the imminent death of my players in D&D. Truly the best. Hmm. Hmm. Intriguing. No, no, no.
Chapter 41.
Sounds like ass.
Chapter 41.
There we go.
Kaita could not believe it. Here was Mag, at last, alone, isolated from her friends. Kaita had kept her promise to Rogan, who received his instructions directly from the Lord himself. The Lord had known. He had always known, all this time, how it would end. His foresight was perfect. And what was more, he really did love Kaita. Despite all her doubts, all her questioning, he saw her value, and he had granted her the boon she most desired. She would never doubt him again. A savage grin spread across her face. "The end of our road," she called out to Mag across the muddy field. "And not soon enough," said Mag, her tone casual. "Are you going to turn into the cat or the bear? Or have you grown tired of tricks? I will kill you like this if you want." Behind Kaita, Tagata snarled at Mag's threats, but Kaita laughed and turned to her. "Dear one, there is no need to worry. Look at her, alone, without anyone to rescue her." "I am not the one who will need rescuing," called Mag. Kaita ignored her, keeping her gaze on Tagata. "Stay here. You know I have our father's strength now." "But I came here for you," said Tagata, scowling past her at Mag. "And you are here for me," said Kaita. "That is what is important. You can be my witness. But let me do this on my own, and help me celebrate when it is over." Tagata's nostrils flared as she heaved a sigh, but then she nodded and took a step back. "Very well." Kaita bowed her head towards Tagata. Then she turned back to Mag. Her hand stole beneath her cloak again, as it had done often on the journey here. But this time, when it came out, a single mage stone was clutched between her fingers. Mag went very still, and Kaita saw it. This was not the indifference of the battle trance, the certainty and neutrality that came with her fearless war mask. This was hesitation, uncertainty. Kaita had never seen it in Mag's demeanor before, and it thrilled her beyond reckoning. For once, for the first time, she was the one in control, and Mag was not confident of the outcome of the fight. A small, quiet pitter-patter of rain began to fall on them, strengthening by the moment. Kaita stood straighter, spreading her hand at her side to catch as much of the setting sun's light as possible, even as clouds moved across the sky to obscure its dying glow. It warmed her skin, reminding her of Tagata as they pressed against each other in the tent. Kaita smiled, and she slid the mage stone between her lips. It crunched between her teeth so sweetly, so gently. There was the slightest resistance, like a carrot that had been steamed to perfection, and then the black crystal melted on her tongue. sliding down her throat like sweet honey. It vanished there, in her center, her core, only to come surging back a moment later. Kaita could feel it coursing through her veins, filling her flesh and her skin and every part of her with pure, raw power. Power. She thought she had known it before. She thought she knew strength in the burly frame of the bear. She thought she knew killing swiftness in the lightning paws of the mountain lion. Of the bear. She thought she knew killing swiftness.
Ooh. Ugly.
Killing swiftness in the lightning paws of the mountain lion. But she had known nothing. She could feel it within her. Every form she knew, every animal she had taken into her canon, now stronger, faster, more nimble. But beneath it all, in her very essence, she could sense something new. A form she had never seen before, had never even imagined. Now it presented itself to her, offering up every detail, letting her see it in its entirety, the way a weremage must see a creature when they learn its form. Every part of it was now as familiar to her as the raven in which she had journeyed endless leagues. This was power. This was safety, the strength to destroy any enemy who ever crossed her. No one could ever banish her again. No one could ever cast her aside for being useless, not with this form inside her. Being useless. Being useless, not with this form inside her. It was everything she had ever wanted. She let the form flow into her, and she began to change. Her eyes turned black, and then they began to glow. A sickening darkness seeped out of them and consumed the fading sunlight. Her skin swelled. It flowed out like water and then hardened, turning rigid as glacial ice, and like ice it was white and translucent. She fell forwards on all fours. Her shoulders and arms swelled like those of an ape in the northern jungles, but half again as tall and 3 times as heavy. Her face jutted forth, and huge fangs erupted from both top and bottom jaws. Where the skin formed into solid white armored plates, it also grew jagged spikes that erupted out all across her form. Between the blades, the surfaces were rough like tree bark made of razors, so that nothing could touch her without coming away bleeding. Kaita gave herself one moment, only one. She closed her eyes, inhaled, and then exhaled again, tensing and flexing every muscle in her new body. She could not believe it. To know that this was the strength of mage stones, this was the power of the wizard kings of old. How had they ever lost it? How could anyone have taken this away from them? No one could stop her now. She should have taken the stones weeks ago. She could have plunged straight into the center of the mystic army. Who could have stopped her? No blade could pierce her hide. No one could live once she had set her sights on them and pronounced their death. Her eyes snapped open, and they focused on Mag. A moment ago, Mag had looked uncertain. That was gone. Her face was a deadpan mask again, the battle trance with which Kaita was all too familiar. Kaita hated it, hated Mag for it. The rainstorm above them had worsened, and now lightning cracked in the sky. Thunder rocked the ground, sending waves through puddles of rainwater. And Kaita roared to meet it, and the sound was like every demon in the darkness below. She charged, and it was more terrible than the worst storms of winter. Kaita's first swipe came faster than the lion, too fast for Mag to dodge. She raised her shield instead, hoping to roll with the blow as she would have with the bear. But it was too strong, and with a crash she was flung back, sliding 5 paces through the mud. Sliding back, sliding 5 paces through the mud. For a moment, Kaita stood there, flexing her great clawed fingers, marveling at them. She had never been so fast, never so strong. Why would the Lord not grant this gift to all his wizard children? Underrealm would not stand for a month, not against even a handful of them. Mag got to her feet. The mud clung too thick for the rain to wash it off. Still, her face was the impassive mask, not a muscle in it twitching. But that was fine. Kata did not need to see Mag's fear. She did not need her to scream or to weep. It was enough to watch her die. Kaita launched herself across the snow. Mag tried to dodge aside, but Kaita turned, quick as lightning. Her left rear limb struck out, a crushing blow that slammed into Mag's back and flung her face down into the ground. When she came up, her lip was split open. Rainwater mixed with the blood, sending it racing down her chin to splash into the mud. Kaita's heart sang. Again she lunged, and then again, each time swiping, snarling. Mag tried to avoid her blows, and sometimes she managed it, but Kaita was simply too fast now. She struck Mag once in the ribs, and something cracked. Her claws raked down Mag's spear arm, sending more bright blood to stain the churning ground. Though it was Kaita's own claws doing the cutting, she almost could not believe it was working. Never in the past had she so much as nicked Mag's skin. From what she knew, no one ever had. Mag backed off 2 paces. She was breathing hard now, though her mangled spear arm did not shake. Her lips... Spear arm did not mangled spear arm did not... Spear arm did not shake. Her lip now, though her mangled spear arm... mangled... Her mangled spear arm did not shake. Her lips still bled down her chin and onto her shirt, but her expression had not changed. As Kaita stood there marveling at her success, Mag leaped. Her spear came up, and she jammed it straight into Kaita's neck. It struck the chitinous armor, and there it stuck. Kaita could barely feel it, like a playful pinch from a lover. She bared her dagger-long fangs, a snarl and a smile all at once. Her claws raked Mag's body. The spear went spinning away. Mag's shirt of scales kept her from being gutted, but the claws punctured it. Kept her from being gutted. But the claws punctured it in places. Blood soaked into her undershirt, and now her spear was behind Kaita, far out of reach. Kaita stepped forwards, planting her claws in the ground on either side of Mag's head. Mag looked up into her ink-black eyes. Black eyes. I was running through the snow in the fading afternoon light, Oku by my side. Afternoon light, Oku. Oku. Afternoon light, Oku by my side. Ahead of us I could hear the inhuman screams of some unknown creature. A new form of Kaita's, I guessed, though I could not imagine what sort of animal would make that sound. My lungs seemed to be screaming nearly as loud, but I ignored them. I had to keep going. Mag was in trouble, and she was alone. That mattered more than any pain. She is alone, I thought. She is alone, and I promised. And in a bitter corner of my mind, a voice snarled, "But she promised too." And then I came over the top of a hill. I was just in time to see Kaita plunge pace-long claws straight through Mag's chest and into the ground.
Hey, Meg. What's up? I'm on stream, working. Do you need, do you want me to bring you coffee? I need to refresh my own coffee anyway. Alright, I'll be there in a minute. Love you, bye. Shooby-doop. So what is this, chapter 41? All right, I'm going to go refresh my coffee. I'll be back in a moment. Praise the chair. Yeah, Megan just woke up and was like, hey, let's talk about our day. And I was like, I'm on stream, but we can talk fast. So we started talking about our day, and I was like, I really got to go. And she was like, I just want to stay in bed all day. And I was like, well, then stay in bed all day, but I really have to go. I love my wife. She's very cute. Oh, the command? Yeah. Nightbot's sleeping. Chapter 42. Oh, man. We're so close to the end, y'all. So close to the end. Three-hour D&D session with a cough? Oh, no. Okay. Ah, that moment when you get elected to be group parent. The game I'm playing today, I'm sort of to a degree, the group mom. Not to the same degree, because everybody's a more or less, experienced player. It's nobody's first campaign. Let's put it that way. And most of us have played a long running campaign together before. But sometimes there's a lot of analysis paralysis, and I don't tend to suffer from that very much. I'm like, listen, we're going to start doing things now because we've been talking about this for 45 minutes and we're no closer to a resolution. And then my character is actually very insightful and protective. So she's also the group mom in the sense of like, okay, well, here's what we're not going to do, or here's what we're going to do, because this person is doing very badly right now, that sort of thing. Why am I not hearing noise?
And
I fucking knew it.
attack. But those claws, Mac's blood.
What the hell? Do you want to catch these hands? Because that's how you catch these hands. That'll definitely help. What the fuck is happening here? Why is this audio file being such a piece of shit?
Was the rain.
Not you. I meant you. Import file. Let's try this. I mean, I guess... Okay, if this doesn't work, I have an idea.
To provide superlative feedback that makes each book better than I could ever make it on my own.
Eh? Oh, wrong one. Okay, fuck this. We're gonna take another action. We're gonna do it another way. Hey, morning, Erica. Morning, Danny. Sorry I didn't see you come in. I'm trying to handle the audio file from hell. Nice. All right, I gotta use the restroom. I'll be right back. Oopa. Okay. So, this silence. Okay, we actually have silence now. Oh no. Don't crash on me, Audition. I swear to fucking God! Damn it!
If this could just start working and doing what it's supposed to do, what it was designed to do, literally the only thing in the universe that it's supposed to do, that would be pretty fantastic. And I would be very happy. One purpose, one wild and precious reason for being. And it can't quite get there. In a world where technology does what the fuck it's supposed to do. Coming next fall.
Yeah, sure. Try to recover the crashed session. That always goes real fucking well for you, Audition. You're good at that. Save that fucking session now, and let's see if you can actually... Oh my god, it's a miracle. Good lord. Nope. Nope. There we go. Okay, we can actually goddamn start now.
Chapter 42.
Sounds like an asshole.
Chapter 42.
There we go.
I stood there for an eternal moment, unable to understand, unwilling to believe. The only sound was the rain slamming into the muddy ground all around us. I almost ran forwards. Oku wavered, looking between Mag and me, waiting for the command to attack. But those claws, Mag's blood. Never had I seen a weremage in their hail-skin form, but I recognized it from the tales I had heard. And if Kaita could do this to Mag, I stood no chance. I hated myself for it, but something kept me from flinging myself into certain pointless death by Mag's side. I threw myself behind a nearby boulder, where I waited, panting from my desperate run. Oku darted into hiding beside me. Gritting my teeth and squeezing the stitch forming in my side, I edged out around the boulder far enough to see. Kaita had Mag pinned to the ground. Blood flowed out of her, turning the mud into a dark slush. I could see it was not her first wound. Her lip had been split, and a deep slice ran down the length of her arm. None of it made sense. It was impossible. In more than 2 decades, I had never seen anyone so much as break her skin. And now she is dying, I thought. I did not want to believe it, but it was true. Any fool could see it, and Mag had to know it. But still her face was impassive, expressionless. She had her shield on her arm, and so she reached up to slam it into Kaita's twisted face. It was like striking a mountain. Kaita did not even flinch. Her left hand was still plunged deep through Mag's body. Now, with her right, she snatched the shield in her massive claws and crushed it. The wood shattered to kindling. Shards of it plunged into Mag's flesh. Kaita's claws constricted further, and I watched them sink through Mag's skin, into the muscle, threatening to cut the arm off. Mag's blood flowed into the mud like a river. The whole time, Kaita never stopped looking straight into Mag's face. She snarled and growled with every new cut. But Mag remained stone-faced. She did not flinch as the raindrops fell right in her eyes, as another blast of lightning tore the sky in half above her. With her left arm in Kaita's claws, only her right arm was free, the mangled, sliced arm that had been wounded before. But one hand had been enough for the bear or the lion, so she formed her fingers into a knife and she jabbed it towards Kaita's eye. Kaita was too quick. She twisted her neck, and Mag's fingers struck her cheek instead. The bones snapped like twigs. Kaita's spikes gouged Mag's palm. Kaita grinned, though it was more of a hateful snarl. She released Mag's shield arm. All her fingers curled into a fist except the forefinger, leaving one great, razor-sharp claw extended to a point. Slowly, ever so slowly, she drove the claw through Mag's throat. Mag's lifeblood bubbled out, gushing around the claw. Her shield arm fell to the ground, and then her spear arm. Her feet slid through the mud as her legs relaxed. But her eyes never left Kaita, even as the light inside them dimmed. Forever. Kaita waited a long moment, as if to be sure. Then she dimmed. Kaita waited a long moment, as if to be sure. Then she straightened. She looked as though she could not believe it was over. I had almost forgotten myself as I lay hiding behind that boulder. It was as if I was not even there, as if I had become disembodied, floating over the scene like a moon in the sky, observing but unable to intervene. But now I had a horrible thought. What if Kaita sensed me, smelled me, heard me? Yet as moments kept stretching, nothing happened. If she had been the lion or even the bear, she might already know I was here, despite the rain. This creature, this hellskin form, seemed to be built entirely for strength, speed, and invulnerability. Its senses were not keen enough to detect me. Kaita stepped back and resumed her human shape. She turned and walked away, and now I saw that the brute woman stood nearby. I had been so focused on Mag that I had not noticed her at first. The two of them embraced. Kaita took one last look back at Mag's fallen form, and then finally they both turned and strode off west, to where I knew the rest of the shades would be waiting. Steady tears poured down my face, and I could not restrain my deep, sobbing breaths, though I tried to keep them quiet. Oku kept whining softly. I held a steady hand on his head, my fingers deep in his sodden fur, though I could not tell you whether it was for my comfort or his. Finally, slowly, I stood from my hiding place and went to Mag. She still stared upwards, right where Kaita's horrid face had been. Oku trotted around to her other side. I fell to my knees in the mud. Rainwater poured over me, soaking through my clothes, but I did not care. I could not deny what had happened, but neither could I believe it, and I would not accept it. Mag was never supposed to die. Eternal, Chausaku had called her, and he was right. She was too strong, too incredible, larger than life, and certainly too remarkable for death. She was never supposed to go, especially if it meant leaving me here on my own. I reached down and brushed her hair out of her eyes, and then I reached down and brushed down and brushed
Where is that noise?
down down, brushed her hair down, brushed down and brushed her down and brushed.
I guess we're gonna have to live with it.
I reached down and brushed her hair out of her eyes, and then I closed them. I fell forwards onto my elbows, my forehead planted in the mud, and my tears spilled to freeze on the ground. Oku...
It's honestly not that big of a deal, Danny. There was a slight, just sort of a mouth noise, like a weird little ring. But it's honestly probably not something anybody else would hear. So, it's one of those things where if I can fix it easily, I'll feel better about it. But it doesn't really matter because only, 5% of anybody who listens is even going to hear it. And it's probably not going to bother them even if they do.
Oku whined and edged forwards. With his muzzle, he prodded at her broken fingers. When she did not move, he pushed harder, lifting her hand to rest on her lap, like he was trying to get her up. When she still did not move, he licked her hand, cleaning off some of the blood. "No, boy," I said, choking on the words. "She is gone. Sky save us. I should never have taken her from Northwood. I wish I had never left Strappa. I wish I had never met—" I stopped, for I could not quite bring myself to say it. And then Mag's body jerked. She gasped, the sound of her breath wet and bubbling through punctured lungs. Her back arched until I thought her spine would snap. Her head barely touched the ground. Every limb jerked and spasmed. Every limb.
See, like, ones like this, boom, fixed.
Every limb.
So that's like a nice, easy one that just handles a mouth click that, again, probably most people wouldn't really care about, but it is just a mouth noisy type thing.
Ground. Every limb jerked and spasmed, her hand striking me in the chest. I could only stare at her in horror. She screamed from her ruined throat. "Mag!" I cried. Dark below, I had been sure she was already dead. This was even worse. Now I would have to sit with her through her agonizing last moments, and I would have to watch. It was Sten all over again. And then I saw her fingers. With sickening wet cracks and pops, they bent back into shape. I saw the bones sliding beneath the skin, muscles and sliding beneath the skin, slide.
I tend to have really ugly mouth clicks on SL together. So I'm always on the lookout for that.
A bone sliding beneath the skin, muscles and tendons tensing, squeezing, twisting. In a few moments, the hand had returned to normal, though it was still covered in blood and cuts from Kaita's bladed skin. Then her slashed arm began to seal itself together. Fresh blood poured from every wound, but slowly the flow was stanched as the skin rejoined, covering them over. I hovered my hands over her, wanting to help but not knowing how. My wondering gaze went from wound to wound, the gaping holes in her chest, the slit in her throat. All of them were healing. Her sealing wounds pushed out the splintered wood from her shield. Then the gaps closed to hide the blood and flesh beneath. Finally, the wounds were gone, leaving nothing so much as a scar. Nothing so much as a scar. And then, all at once, many things made sense for the first time.
That moment when... Silly me for thinking honesty was something given free out. Make the rules. Ugh. Chapter 42. Mm-hmm. It does make her title quite ironic. Like, I could totally picture some, sort of like grammar nerd which I say with deep affection, being like, uncut lady is kind of like not really the right term, because that would mean that she was cut and then uncut. You know what I mean? Like that the cut was removed, and I would be like, oh, well, that's funny. But, you know, it's just like a title. It's just sort of metaphorical, and they'd be like, no, I get that, but I just wanted to point. And then they hit the end of the trilogy, and they're like, oh. And I'm like, right. Alburn didn't know that when he gave her that name, but he was accidentally very correct. Well, so about that. Exactly. Hello. There we go. Nope.
Chapter 43. We were in the mountains of Tokana, and Mag and I had found our first troll. Dark. We were in the mountains of Tokana, and Mag and I had found our first troll. Dark Taker, she had taunted it, accusing it of working with the shades. The troll roared and slammed its hands into the earth. The troll roared and slammed...
See, there's that SL again. And you can actually see on the waveform, you see that click? Right here? Ugly motherfucker. But when it's big and obvious like that, it's way easier for the program to recognize it, and therefore it's easier for me to take it out. And it's always on SL.
Shades. The troll roared and slammed its hands into the earth before storming towards her. No chance of peace, then, said Mag. I suspected as much. Mag, I cried, but too late. She crouched and leaped towards the thing. It struck her a backhanded blow and sent her flying over a nearby house. She landed where I could not see her, among the debris of another destroyed home. Her spine snapped. Broken, jagged beams from the wrecked house pierced her side and her leg. Mag gritted her teeth and stifled her scream as best she could. Her arms were useless, and her spear and shield were useless. And her spear and shield fell to the ground. For a short while she sat there, heaving agonized breaths through her teeth. Then her spine cracked and popped, pushing itself back into place.
All right, Nix, thanks for coming by.
Mag cried out as she felt her bones rearranging themselves inside her, her nerves reconnecting to flood her mind with agony. She could use her arms again. She reached up and seized the jagged end of the wooden spar. As she pulled herself off it, she whimpered at the feeling of the twisted wood ripping through her insides. The wounds were already sealing when she fell to the ground on all fours. Soon there was no hole in her side. The slices along her palm vanished. The slices along her palm vanished. Shaking, she got to her feet and inspected herself. Scooping up some dirt from the ground, she scrubbed at the fresh bloodstains until they were dry. Then she snatched up her weapon and shield and ran back towards me and the troll. By the time she found me, there were no signs of injury, and in my panic at the troll, I did not notice the new bloodstains in her clothes. bloodstains in her clothes. We were in the mountains near Opara. Shades had ambushed Mag, Tuin, and me. Mag had gone running off with Oku beside her, hunting the shades in the dips and crags of the land. She had killed 3 already, and they were starting to figure out she was among them. A shade heard her coming and drew. Mag rounded the corner, and his arrow took her in the eye. Her body went limp in an instant, like a puppet with cut strings. Oku howled in rage and leaped at the man. The shade dropped his bow and drew a long dagger, trying to fend Oku off. They danced around each other, neither managing to land a blow. Oku paced around the shade, growling, while the man tried to find a chance to plunge his blade home. Behind him, Mag's body shuddered. Slowly she got back to her feet. She gritted her teeth as she seized the arrow and pulled it out. Her eye was still healing when the shade turned too late and saw her. His face filled with horror as she plunged her spear into his heart. She fell to her knees, shaking her head in a futile attempt to clear it of the pain. Tears poured from her remaining eye at the horrific feeling of her brain repairing itself inside her skull, and then of the bone growing back into place. As her mind started to clear, she probed the shade's body with shaking hands. Her fingers found a water skin. "Thank the sky," she muttered, voice wobbling. She poured the water over her face and head, washing away the blood as best she could. By the time she returned to me, I thought the blood covering her had spilled from the shades she had killed. But Oku trotted by her side, looking up at her and whining, and I did not understand why.
So it's funny. If you've read these books, and then if you've sort of like read them again, you've probably noticed moments that are recontextualized now. Like you read these scenes that he's reflecting back on at the end of the book, and you can see where like Oku is like whining at Mag, and it doesn't make any sense when you read it the first time, or it's just a detail that you don't think is important when you read it the first time. And then rereading it, you're like, oh, right, he did that, but I didn't know why, and da-da-da-da. So Megan, being my wife, Megan knows a lot about the future of Underrealm, including, like, the biggest spoilers that almost no one else in the entire world knows. And like, she knows one secret that I think, if I remember correctly, only 4 people in the world know. And so she's reading Life Mage Dawning right now. And she's like, this scene. And I'm like, I know. And she's like, this scene. And I'm like, I know. And she's like, but no one else. This doesn't mean anything to anyone else. And I'm like, I know.
And I did not understand why. We were in Lan Shui, and Mag was alone, fighting 2 vampires in the burning house that had once been a shade hideout. We had named one Shoulders, the other was the largest, so Mag had dubbed it King. She kicked Shoulders over a chair. Flames caught along its skin, and it screeched in pain as the fire consumed it. She followed up with her spear, impaling it against the wall. Shoulders lashed out in its death throes. Its clawed hands and feet raked across Mag's arm, her shoulders, her neck. But Mag, secure in her battle trance, did not flinch. She watched its body wither and die, vanishing in flames like parchment. King smelled the passage down into the basement with the Magestone blood. He knocked her aside, breaking one of her arms in the process. Mag fell to the ground, impassive, silent. And by the time Yue and I found her, Her wounds had sealed themselves, and her arm had returned to normal. "One left," she said, pointing to the basement door, and we followed her down without question. Without question. Mag was in the woods outside Shwiniu. She was naked and alone. She could not speak, for she knew no words, and she was hunting dinner. A deer stood in the forest, a half span ahead of her. In her hands was a sharpened stick, a poor substitute for the spontoon she would one day own, but still deadly in her grip. She stalked as close as she dared. When she could not draw any closer without the deer hearing her, she threw the spear. The instant it left her hand, she was already sprinting forwards. The spear plunged into the deer's flank. The animal screamed, even as Mag leaped through the air towards it. Landing feet first, she bowled it over and seized the spear. She yanked it out, shoved it into the deer's neck, and held the buck down while its body jerked in its final spasms. She had crouched down, ready to feast, when she heard a snarl. She whirled faster than blinking, but not quite fast enough. Her fingers sank into fur as she clutched the throat of a panther. It knocked her to the ground as she had done to the deer, but Mag was prey to no creature. Her hands became knives. She could not reach its eyes, but she struck it under the legs and in the jugular. It yowled in pain. But before she could drive it off, its jaws clamped down on her throat. It gave a vicious jerk of its head, and her neck broke with a sickening snap. Mag's body went limp. The panther held her for a moment. Then it dropped her and padded over to the deer. For a moment it sniffed, inspecting the corpse, before digging its fangs into the hide and beginning to eat. Mag's body jerked. Her neck snapped back together, and she gave a strangled cry of agony. She closed her eyes, deep breaths forcing themselves in and out, while the wounds in her neck slowly sealed over. She rose. The panther turned. It stared up at her, its amber eyes glinting in the sunlight that broke between the tree trunks. It must have known this was a fight it could not win, for it turned and fled deep into the woods. Mag heaved a sigh and returned to her deer. Once again she crouched, ready to eat, but this time she kept a wary ear out for any other creature approaching her. And then she heard something. Footsteps coming closer. She went to investigate, and she stumbled upon Duana, out for a walk. It was the Battle of Northwood, and the beginning of my long out for a walk. It was the Battle of Northwood, and the beginning of my long journey by Mag's side, seeking revenge against Kaita. Sten had died. Mag had attacked Kaita with all her fury, but the weremage had escaped. Now the two of us stood against a fresh wave of shades, but the people of Northwood had rallied around us, and there was a pitched battle in the streets. I saw Mag surrounded by her enemies. I saw her kill, but I also saw them cut and pierce her with their blades. A club struck me unconscious, and Mag saw me fall. No, she thought, in the part of her mind behind the battle trance. Not Albert. Not him, too. She shoved through the crowd and scooped me up. Holding me under one arm, she carried me through the battle and to safety. Behind a building that hid us both from sight, she set me down and felt for a heartbeat. It was there, and it was strong, thank the sky. Her battle trance fell away, and she breathed a sigh of relief, but it turned to a hiss of pain as her wounds started to seal themselves. When she was whole, she picked me up again. The battle was starting to wind down. She found Elsie and placed me in her charge, to be healed on the floor of the tavern's common room. When I awoke and saw her, I stared at her in wonder. "Before I went down," I said, "I saw you surrounded. I thought I saw you wounded." I had seen her wounded. She stepped forwards and held out her arms. "They did surround me. I fought my way free. Do you see any wounds?" At least she did not lie to me. Not then, anyway. I did not see any wounds, and so I sighed. "You are frightening sometimes, Mag." "Only sometimes?" She smiled, and it hid every bit as much sadness as the mask of her battle trance. She was the uncut lady still, so far as any of us knew. Far as any of us knew. Sun stared blankly at Alburn across the bar. Surreptitiously, she glanced down at her mug. How much of it had she had? Was this her second drink or third? Was the ale the reason the old man had ceased to make any sense? "What exactly are you saying?" Alburn's mouth twisted, and though he had revealed the tale's great secret to her, there was no joy in his expression, none of the restrained smile of a skald who enjoys the reaction of his audience. There was only a profound mournfulness.
Hey, Lady Temeraire, good to see you.
"I am saying what you think I am saying, but you are reluctant to hear it. Do you begin to understand now, son? That was the moment I learned a lesson I have been trying to impart to you all this time. Not just today, but since we met in that tavern. Mag's story, the legend that surrounded her, the impossibly grand tale of the uncut lady. It was never something we were meant to believe. It was a good story. It bolstered the spirits of all who knew her, and especially those who fought beside her. It made our lives grander to hear it, even if we doubted it was true, because deep in our hearts, we knew it could not have been. And as you will see, the story itself was a protection of sorts. It hid a truth Mag did not wish to reveal. Sun felt lost in wonder. There were 1,000 things she wanted to ask, but all her questions seemed limp and useless in the face of this knowledge. She was surprised to find that she believed him without question. Often before this she had doubted Alburn's tale, even though most of it seemed possible. This new revelation seemed entirely impossible, and yet she did not doubt it for an instant. "Mag was never the person I thought she was," Alburn went on. "In some ways she was less than the legends, and in other ways she was more. Yes, she was an incredible fighter, but not as great as the stories made her out to be. She had suffered wounds. She had even died before, many times. But she always came back. And with every death, she learned, and she became faster and stronger and even better in the next fight." But how?" said Sun, finding her voice at last. "How is it at last?"
Ooh, that click, though. Holy shit, look at this.
Her voice at last. "How is it possible? Where did she gain such power, and why?" Alburn fixed her with a look. "I know the answers to those questions, but I am not yet ready to give them. Can you accept that?" Sun met his gaze for a long, silent moment. "Yes."
Awesome, Danny. See you later. Thanks so much for coming by.
"Yes." "Good," said Alburn. He sighed. "Then for now, let us return to that cold night in the rain."
Chapter 43. $43 and $43. Perfect. Asmodeus, Asmodeus, Asmodeus.
Chapter 44. Mag? I could only stare at her in wonder. I had no idea what under the sky was going on. Mag's screams had subsided, but she still whimpered and groaned through clenched teeth. Her wounds were still stitching up, her body snapping itself back into shape. She was in agony. And what could I do about it? I could not even touch her without provoking a fresh cry of pain. Her eyes focused for a moment, and then they found me, but she quickly turned away. "What are you doing here?" she gasped. The words were horribly mangled and garbled. Her throat was not yet fully healed. "What in the dark below do you mean?" I demanded. "I came after you, you absolute fool. What were you thinking coming out here alone?" "Why should I ask you to come?" she said. "Look at me. You would only have died." "And you should be dead," I said. "Mag, what is—" A horrible realization struck me. I seized Mag's shoulders and hauled her over to lie on her stomach. She tried to resist, tried to grip my wrist and render me helpless, as she had countless times before. But beneath her sealing skin, her muscles were still horribly mutilated, and she had no more strength than a toddler. Once she was lying face down, I seized her hair and shoved it up, pulling it side to side. I inspected the back of her neck, and then, when I found nothing, I tried higher up on the scalp. "There is nothing," said Mag through gritted teeth. The muddy ground muffled her words. "Nothing, Alban. I swear." I ignored her and looked carefully for myself. But she was right. There was nothing. I rolled her back over, and she glared at me as she came to rest on her back again. "This magic," I said. "It is the enchantment of the Shade's master. How did you come by it? How long have you had it?" "I do not know," she said, still clearly in pain, her teeth gritted. "Do not lie to me, Mag." "I do not know, Alban." she pleaded. I have been like this since I could remember. But why? I said. How did it start? I do not know, she said. I have some vague, hazy memory of the middle of the woods, near that town called Chuaniu, the one I told you about that was not far from Taitu. There I lived alone for many years, hunting for food in the forest. It was a long time before I met other people. I did not know how to speak when they found me. I only knew my name and how to kill. Another chill went through me. Mag, how long ago was that? She took a deep breath and met my gaze. 20 years before we met. Slowly I shook my head. That is impossible. You were only 20 years old when we met, or around that age. Do not try to tell me you came out of the woods as an infant, already knowing how to fight. No, Alburn, she said quietly. I'm telling you I came out of the woods like this, exactly as I am now, in every way. I suddenly felt dizzy, and I sank back onto my rear in the mud. Chausaku had seen it. He had told me, but I had laughed him off. He said she was far younger than I was, and I told him she aged well. She did not age well. She did not age at all. She looked exactly the same now as she had when we met. But for years I had kept telling myself that that was not true, because it could not be. I told myself I saw subtle differences, things only I could see because I knew her so well. But that was a lie, something to let my mind feel secure in the face of the inexplicable. I had thought Chausaku could not see the truth because he was too removed. In fact, I could not see it because I was too close. Mag had not aged since long before we had met, and in all the battles we had fought in our youth, and then in Northwood, and on the long road since. It was not that Mag could not be touched, it was that she always came back, and she hid it from me, from everyone. You kept it a secret, I said. Every time I thought I saw you injured and you turned out to be fine. I was right. You were wounded, many times, but you healed, and I ascribed it to the chaos of battle. I told myself I had seen something that had not happened. Yes, she said. Yes, you have the right of it. Mag's body was mostly together now. She pushed herself. It was mostly. Mag's body was mostly together now. She pushed herself up to sitting, dangling her arms over her knees. She was avoiding my gaze again. The rain had died out somewhat, and now it merely trickled onto us. I could not help a snort of laughter. No wonder you always hated my nickname. You were never the uncut lady at all. She shook her head. No, I was not. Just a lonely wanderer with a curse and no memory of how it came to me. And you are sure it has nothing to do with the Lord? I pressed. I told you of Triskin in the mountains, and you have seen the brute woman here. The way their bodies heal themselves, no matter the wound, it is not the same, said Mag, her voice low but fervent. You said nothing of Triskin's pain when you told me of his power, and I have seen the brute woman suffer wounds. When she shrugs them off, her body is not racked with agony. And then there is that tattoo they have. Sky above, Alburn, you have seen me naked often enough to know I do not have one, not on my neck or anywhere else. This enchantment their lord has given them, and what happens to me, they may be similar in effect, but they are nothing alike in nature. Mayhap, I said thoughtfully, and yet there may be a link. But that is a matter for another time, I suppose. If you say so, said Mag. She sounded as defeated as she had that morning when we sat despondent by the fire together. Oku nuzzled her hands with his head, as he had when she lay broken in the mud. Mag scratched him half-heartedly behind the ears. I reached out and put a hand on her shoulder, shaking my head. "So, this is why you ran off on your own," I said. "This is why you always go off on your own, no matter the danger. You know you will not die." "Yes," whispered Mag. "And if I was injured, I did not want you to see it. I have worked hard to keep everyone from discovering what I am, because I do not understand it myself." I leaned back, looking up into the graying sky. The sun was gone in the west, and its last light was quickly vanishing. And its last light was quickly vanishing. I suppose that makes sense. Her gaze flitted to me and then away again. "You were likely angry with me." I thought about that. "Did Sten know?" Mag nodded. "And one other. My old master, Duana, who taught me brewing in Shuiniu. I am sorry, Albert. I have known you longer than I knew either of them. It is no defense, but I promise I did not mean to tell them. They found out." At that, I finally had to laugh out loud. The look of shock it put on her face was priceless. "Mag, stop it. Doc below, you do not have to apologize to me that your husband knew more about you than I did." Her eyes were wide now, and she blinked twice at me. I suppose I am surprised that you are not more upset with me." My voice trailed off. To be honest, I did not entirely understand it myself. "Mag, it is your life. It is not mine. But I do wonder, and please believe that this is only curiosity. Why did you not tell me? What were you afraid of?" She shrugged. "I am not exactly sure, but when does one bring up something like this? Certainly not when we first met." "And how about all the time after, when we were fighting together?" I smiled to reassure her I was not angry. "It would have been nice not to be terrified every time you ran off and did something foolish." To my surprise, Mag shook her head sharply. "No, never that. I never wanted it to be known to anyone I fought beside, even you. I never wanted it to become an expectation in anyone else's mind. Would you put it past some of our commanders to fling me into the thickest fighting if they did not have to worry about me dying? You have seen what coming back does to me. Every injury is twice as painful. I suffer all the agony of the wound itself, and then the pain of my body putting itself back together." A frown crossed her face. I am not certain, but I think that is why I learned to fight so well, so that I could protect myself from suffering in battle." I frowned. "You think that is why you learned?" Her expression grew bleak. "I do not remember learning it, Albert. I mean it when I say that I have always been this way. Everything before that forest in Shuiniu is empty. There is nothing. I told you yesterday that I wanted an after. Mayhap that is because I have never had a before." I leaned back on my hands, staring at her. "Mag, you damn fool. I'm sorry I found out this way." Mag's eyes locked on mine. "You what?" "You never meant to tell me," I said. "You should not have had to tell me if you did not wish to. I should have found out on your terms or not at all." "That is what upsets you?" said Mag. "Albert, that would never have happened. I did not want you to know. And it was never something I had to worry about when I was in Northwood and you were in Strapa. But ever since we set out on this long road together, I have been terrified you would discover the secret and be hurt that I had not told you decades ago." I waved a hand vaguely. "You were speaking to the wrong person for that, Mag. I had no right to any of your secrets, least of all this. But still, why come out here alone? Did you think you could succeed against Kaita by yourself? when we have failed together every time? She sighed, licking her lips. I had to try. I thought that if I had only gone alone when we went to the shade encampment in the cave, I could have ended her. I could have plunged into the thick of them, and who cared if I raised the alarm? They could not have killed me. So that is what I was going to try to do. And that is what I must try to do again. She started to push herself up. Now that I know of her hellskin form, I can act quickly enough to... Whoa now, I said, pushing her back down. I could never have done it if she were at full strength, but she was still weak from the healing. You sit down and you shush. Mag's brows arched, and for a moment she looked like her old self again. Excuse me? I will not. I thrust a finger at her. You now find yourself in the same situation as everyone you have ever fought. You are facing a foe that you cannot hope to defeat in a fair fight. Instead, you must be sneaky as well as cunning.